The pressure in the game you get out with what you put into it. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Good evening, and you're very welcome to Treaty Talk. It is episode 347 as the numbers take up and up every week. Tom Clancy here as ever, and with Matt O'Callaghan taking a break. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by GA correspondent with the Limerick leader. That's Paul Shaughnessy. Paul, welcome back to Treaty Talk. How's all with you?
Good now, Tom. I'm looking forward to an exciting weekend. Hard to think we're at the quarter-final stage already in the Limerick Senior Hurling Championship, and that will be down to 4 teams after this weekend. So it is heating up and between all the different grades. A lot of clubs making a big push now to try and push on in their championships and get their hands on some silverware later on the year.
Yeah, we'll be down as far as 4 teams, not just in senior, we'll have it all the way down to junior A, and obviously even individually for junior B, and I know the junior C is starting to come to the business end of it. We've 104, I think 103 or 104 hurling teams in Limerick. It's the race that's supposed to be the best at your grade. That's what it's all about. You're, as I said before to listeners, you're a Galway native. How are you finding the fare at the moment in Limerick? You're probably a little bit removed from it compared to myself and others, but how are you finding it? Is your second kind of year in the teeth of it in Limerick?
Yeah, it's nice to go as a game neutral and not have any skin in the game when it comes to Limerick club games, but it's been really interesting this year. Last year, there was obviously the big 4 of Patrick Swell, Kilmallock, Doon and Piercy, and we've already seen Patrick Swell out of the championship, so it's already shown the strength of the Limerick Senior Hurling Championship this year, and we've seen Ballybrown, who've been probably one of the most impressive teams throughout this year's championship, and Monaleen as well, who are going to be in action this weekend. So it's been great to see teams who weren't in that top 4 push on and make the breakthrough, and some of those clubs will be hoping to make the breakthrough into the last 4. But I think overall it's been a impressive Limerick Senior Hurling Championship this year. As I mentioned, we won't have the same 4 teams back in the semi, which I always think is a good thing when it comes to club championship. Freshens it up and makes it that bit more exciting.
Yeah, we're going to have only outside of those 4, we had South Liberties a couple of years ago, and whoever wins between Adair and Ballybrown, it'll be their first final since 2016 when they actually met in the semi-final. So yeah, that's a freshness. Now, of course, I'm a small bit biased myself, and I'm happy to see that. But I think that is the feedback you're getting around the county. It's good to have a bit of a shake-up. Monaleen are obviously a coming force, and there's some near misses as well. Mungret probably last weekend felt a little bit unlucky that they kept up their side of the bargain in Group 2, but just couldn't get the results to go their way elsewhere in the name of Newcastle West. But there's storylines of plenty across the grades, isn't there?
Yeah, there is for sure. And even being in McNeville Park last Saturday alongside yourself when you were doing the commentary on the game, just what happened in that Adair game of John Fitzgibbon missing the penalty, then he gets a goal from open play and it's disallowed. John O'Halloran deeming that Willie Griffin had fouled Mike Quilligan in the build-up, and I'd say there was a lot of Mungret St. Paul supporters who were getting excited when they see what was happening, and then Adair finally get their goal at the end and win in injury time, just with all the games on at 2:00. For me, it was very exciting, but I'm sure if you're from Mungret St. Paul's, they were probably absolutely devastated because they nearly had one hand in that quarter-final, and as you mentioned, just came up so short in that last round of the group game. And then for, even if you take Newcastle West as a club, I'm sure they'd be disappointed in one sense, but there's a lot to build on. But just the fact that they weren't able to win a game in Group 2, the Senior Hurling Championship, I'm sure that's the biggest disappointment for them. But then when you consider the way they have performed and They haven't been heavily beaten in any game at all in the Senior Hurling Championship, and just a lot of draws for them throughout the championship. There's something for them to build on. Obviously, if you take Kildimo Pallaskinnery there, for example, the loss of Kyle Hayes was just a significant loss for them, and just unfortunate for Drumnad Lack. I know they lost Keane Scully as well throughout the championship, which is a big blow, but they're going back down to Premier Intermediate 2 years after being in this grade. So disappointing for them, but I'm sure they'll be hoping to make the bounce straight back up again when they do get down to that Premier Intermediate grade. But I think they're a big story, Tom, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I suppose I had seen some people tipping them to be relegated at the start here. We might as well stay in Group 2, Paul, while we're chatting about it. We'll come to Group 1 as well, and the fallout there. Yeah, there is probably the story. I mean, they didn't win the first 3 games last year. Then they beat Ballybrown, gave them a shot in the arm, and it was basically a relegation playoff with South Liberties. They got relegated South Liberties and kept themselves up. And injuries start of the year, you'd really have feared for them even early on. Lost to Monaleen, probably threw away a win against Mungret. Deserved maybe a draw out of it, got the draw, maybe deserved a win, but kind of threw it away in one instance. But since then, they've been quite good, and probably I think deserving of their place in the top 2, given that kind of steady upward trajectory. I think maybe Mungret probably rightfully a little bit behind them. Mungret didn't get going until it was a little bit too late. Obviously, won their last 2 games to add to that draw in round 2. But I think they have a nice blend there. You're looking at Patrick Carney. I mean, he's the youngster that's starting to shine. But at the weekend, and I'm just going to play a clip here as well from the streaming, because talk about a stroke of genius from the management to make us up at half-time. Let's take a look at this.
Into the full forward line as well. So the full forward line tomorrow is Brendan O'Connor. As you see, Willie Griffin there is out to centre forward. So they've Brendan O'Connor, Patrick Carney and Declan Hannon inside the full forward line. It's going to be route 1 again by the looks of it.
Ball worked inside by John McSweeney. Ball worked in straight away. Oh, back in the net.
Yeah, 17 and a half seconds or something thereabouts for Brendan O'Connor to get his hand on the ball and put it in the back of the net. That was, given the elements, Paul, that was a fairly transformational moment in the game, wasn't it?
Oh, he just caused absolute chaos when he went in, and what a move by Mark Foley to introduce him. Newcastle West just couldn't deal with him. He got the first goal, as you mentioned, so much to do there, catch it, and the way he just slots it into the bottom corner was really impressive. And then he's key again for the second goal, for the penalty laid on for John Fitzgibbon. So he was really the difference.
He won. He definitely caught 3 balls that we can remember clean. There's that one, and there's the 2 penalties, and that directly led to 2 goals and a point. So, talk about a bench impact, that is magnificent.
Yeah, and I think there's probably a case that he has to start this weekend when you consider the influence he made in that second half. But even if you take it back to there in round 2, I remember being at the Mungret St. Paul's game in Clarina, and Mike Keane was injured at the time. Wayne McNamara and Willie Griffin both went off with hamstring injuries. And
in the first half,
yeah, in the first half. And I remember talking to Mark Foley that night, and you could tell he was probably disappointed with some of the injuries they picked up. But in fairness, they've just battled away. And last Saturday was probably the first time they had their strongest team on the pitch all year, and they're able to introduce Wayne McNamara late on, Willie Griffin in the first half, and then Conor Ryan, the youngster who's been cornerback for the majority of the campaign. So it just shows when they've got closer to full strength, they're starting to build a panel. The only concern you'd have for Adair heading into this weekend is obviously Declan Hannon limped off late on that second half with an ankle injury, and just the turnaround in Everton 8 days. It is, if you pick up any sort of niggle, it's very hard to get yourself back on the pitch now.
Yeah, and I think actually just to mention Mark Connolly, I suppose rumours or reports or whatever that he's done his cruciate. Now, we not unconfirmed. Hopefully that's not the case, but he went off, as you probably recall, after 25 minutes, and he's it seems to be the revolving door for there at the minute this year. They get a couple of players injured, then they get a couple of others back, and then those guys seem to come back and someone else is getting injured. And you'd have to feel particularly for Mark, obviously, he seemed to be going quite well this year. Certainly from the couple of games that I've been at their last 2 games, he was making an impact, especially against Drumnad Lack. But for Declan, like that is very disappointing. He said real trouble, I think, all year with injury with Limerick. We didn't see much of him at all. I think we saw him maybe 3 times, one start for Limerick all year. And you just feel for him because he can't seem to get a run of games, and looked like he was having a run with the club, and potentially now his season curtailed temporarily at least, and maybe even cut short entirely. We don't know the severity of it, of course.
Yeah, particularly for himself with the club to be back in a county quarter-final, it's just really disappointing. And as you mentioned, it was a really interrupted campaign for him with Limerick. I'll always remember the day Limerick were supposed to play Kilkenny, and he was named centre-back, and then he picked up another injury after that, and we didn't see him really for a lot of the year. And as you mentioned, just interrupted. It's obviously just been niggle after niggle, and the Drummond and Lacka game, he obviously got 2 goals in that one, and he seemed to be hitting a bit of form, and he was having an influence the last day out in the half-forward line. But it just is unfortunate now if he is ruled out of this weekend, because last year it was a really difficult campaign for Adair, and maybe he mightn't have obviously said it openly, but there was probably talk, would Adair be able to get back to the knockout stages? And as we mentioned, the turnaround has just been excellent for them, so it's really disappointing for him to miss out on the final, if that is the case, but hopefully it's not.
Yeah, it's probably more likely that he misses it than not at this juncture. You mentioned the turnaround. Just to look at the other games in this group, it looked to me, I know we were keeping an eye on the scores, Mungret St. Paul's, once they got on top, once they got 2 or 3 points ahead of Drummond at Lacka, they were comfortable enough. Now, there was a scenario where they potentially might have needed to win by handsome enough score. They ended up winning by 6 in the end. Correctly predicted by yours truly. It's great to get a couple right on the week that was. But they won by 6 in the end. In fairness to Drummond at Lacka, their leader, talisman, often has been the captain as well, David Reedy. He I suppose he helped them. They died in their shield, as they say. I think he got a goal even late on from a free, chipped in. I think it was a 1-5 or 1-6 again. You'd feel sorry for any player with Drummond at Lacka, particularly someone like David, though. He's been so important for that club, such a great ambassador as well. Since they came up, he's been in the top 5 scorers in the last couple of seasons as well. Overall, he's played a pivotal role, and I'm very sorry for Drummond. They won their first 2 games, 2024, lost the following 3. That was enough though to keep them in the race. This year, it just didn't happen for them. Even that draw against Newcastle West, they probably beat that they left 2 points behind them. Maybe so too with Newcastle West, but unfortunately their trap door is open. It's one has to go. I think Drummond and Lacka probably, given their form, as I mentioned there, no one deserves to go down, but they probably, I suppose, look the most likely from a distance out.
Yeah, just on David Reedy there, he's been absolutely immense for Drummond at Lacka. Every day he's went out, whether it's been centre half back, centre half forward, or midfield. He's nearly played in a lot of positions for Drummond at Lacka this year, but his scores every day. If I wasn't at a Drummond at Lacka game, I'd look at the match report, and David Reedy would be nearly guaranteed to be their top scorer. And he's had a really impressive campaign for Drummond at Lacka. He nearly tried his best to keep them up, and as you mentioned, unfortunately they're going to be a Premier Intermediate team, but that can't be any fault. Like, David Reedy tried his best, and it's promising for Limerick as well that he's still having another really impressive campaign. Others to mention too, Tyke Body in attack had a good campaign for them.
Yeah, his first year at the grade, he transferred into the club this year, so his first time at senior hurling, and he's someone we'd seen for the 17s and 20s, so that augurs well that Tyke was kind of leading the line in a lot of ways. He was not taking the kind of closer in frees and chipped in from play on some days as well.
Yeah, no, he's really impressive, and whether it was frees or play, he was really chipping in with scores. And obviously William Dorr too there in the full back line, who's played with Mary I and been involved in the Limerick panel at the start of the year. But just probably Drummond at Lacka couldn't afford to lose a player like Keane Scully, particularly if he probably played midfield. Well, that's where he usually played for them throughout the championship. So just unfortunate for them to lose Keane Scully, but it's just about regrouping now and going again next year for them.
Yeah, so that group next year will have the Premier Intermediate winners. You'll have Mungret St. Paul, you'll have Newcastle West, you'll have Kildare Pallaskenry, you'll have Patrick Swell, and who am I missing there? Did I say Mungret? Adair will still be in it there, yeah. Be interesting, I suppose, to see who joins them. But the Adair and Patrick Swell next year in the one group, I think near neighbours as well. Nice rivalry there. Maybe going back into the early 2000s, there was a fair few county quarters and semis, and even I think the odd final between those two sides. So that's something to look forward to. Mentioning Patrick Swell, I suppose in brief, Paul, about their game. Look, a complete dead rubber with Na Piarsaigh, 12 points reversed for Patrick Swell. Quite literally a year to forget for the Well. People always go on about the talents that they have in the form of Aaron Gillan, Cian Lynch, Dermot Burns. The first two I mentioned there were absent through injury. Dermot did play, credit to him. I know it's a difficult week personally as well. But aside from that, Patrick Swell probably never got firing, never found their spark, never found their mojo. And when you're in Group 1 with the best other 5 teams in the county, if you don't hit the ground running, it can be a long year. And they've seen it. They've seen other teams have that problem. The likes of Mungret last year, losing all their games. Patrick Swell never got going, and it was a short campaign, but it was a long campaign if you get a real testing one for them.
Yeah, I think after the first day they lost to Kilmallock, they probably didn't come away too disappointed, but I think that first night they only got 4 points from play, and it was sort of a concern as the championship went on. Doon as well, they were reliant on the place balls in the second game, and I just think that was a team for Patrick Swell in the first 2 or 3 games. They were really struggling to get scores from play, and then to lose Aaron Gillan throughout the championship with that hand injury was obviously a significant loss there too. And I just think for Patrick Swell, it might give the club now a chance to reset, and they probably need to, I suppose, become more competitive, particularly at the underage grades, because probably haven't seen them contending at the top underage grades for a long time, and they're probably going to have to start bringing through more and more younger players, because in fairness, there's a lot of Patrick Swell players there, like the likes of the O'Briens, Dermot Burns, Cian Lynch, Aaron Gillan, Nigel Foley. They've all given terrific service, and even Johnny O'Brien came on in a few games. They've given terrific service to Patrick Swell over the last few years, and it's probably now just a chance where they're going to need to start bringing through 1 or 2 young fellas every year. But even if you go back to last year, they kind of just got out of the group by the skin of their teeth. And
two wins and 3 losses last year. So I think overall their form has been quite poor, and I think they're probably a little bit lucky in some ways to beat Monaleen in that quarter final. But yeah, I think is it something like 3 championship wins out of 11 or 12 games, something like that. Top of my head now, stuff with that, but when you look at it like that, you say this is probably not surprising. They probably haven't been able to live with the Doon and Patrick Swell in the last couple of seasons, and well, even Kilmallock for that matter as well at times. So yeah, it's a concern. But to flip it on, I suppose looking at last weekend, Na Piarsaigh, this squad, it is a squad. Like, I think club managers go on about having a squad. Sometimes they don't have a squad. They have 17, 18 players, and that's what they're working with. They will play that line to us in the media, but Na Piarsaigh have a squad. I think it's fair to say, Paul, don't they?
Yeah, and I remember telling you, Tom, after they drew with Doon early on this year in Kilmallock in that first game, that I told you at that stage they win the championship. Yes. So I just want to get that on the record.
They're 2 wins away now. They're 2 wins away.
2 wins away, but yeah, the squad is just it's insane levels. You look at the last day, Mike Foley hasn't been in the team in the last few games. He comes in at wing back, scores 2 points. James Finn, who's been in midfield, Wayne Kearns comes in there, and then Peter Casey obviously returning and playing at the weekend.
Gets a goal early on, didn't he?
Yeah, like this could be the first time we see Na Piarsaigh at full strength in the semi-final, where they literally have everyone, because it hasn't been the case for the last few years. Adrian Breen struggled with injuries, but Adrian Breen this year has just got a consistent run of games. If I'm not wrong, he didn't play the first few games last year. I know he was out for the first 1 or 2 games, but won 7 from play at the weekend. And even earlier on, it was against the Han. Yeah, Adrian Breen got man of the match that day. I think it's the second.
Did he get 1-3 or 1-4 against the Han? He got 1-7 the other day. He's I know I have the graphic there somewhere, but in terms of top scorers from playing the championship, he's after shooting up the ranks. But like, Adrian is not. I have it here. Adrian is not the youngest man in the world for this for sport at this level, shall we say? But my God, is he a smart hurler? Just to look at for those watching, there he is in 4th place. Adrian Breen 2-13 from play, and starting to find his mojo again, and starting to find that real danger. But while we're on the topic, Paul, like, some very familiar names in there, and I think when you look at I think Donncha O'Donnell has been very consistent in the last few years from play, Aidan O'Connor. But good to see the likes of, I think, Jack O'Keefe, Con Hayes, and obviously Owen Hurley are new to the grade. And even further down the list, Ross Kenny, I think, is a new one, probably a new one in that regard. And then you've young enough players in the form of Dylan Lynch, and particularly young player in John O'Connor. So these are guys that are every day we've seen them are kind of really standing out, not just for their scoring, but I think just how they're leading for their teams, aren't they?
Yeah, and even if you go down the list there, Con Hayes involved with Limerick earlier on the year, really impressive. And John O'Connor is a player he was playing in the Premier Minor final a few weeks ago, and he's been really impressive. And Dylan Lynch was involved with Limerick this year, and Ross Kenny has been one of the breakout stars throughout this club championship for Ballybrown. So I think a lot of the names you're seeing down there in the list, you probably will see them involved with Limerick at some stage in 2026.
Yeah, just so back to the Pierce, they obviously have done their work, got through the group unbeaten, drew the first day, and it's been 4 wins on the bounce since then, and pretty impressive. I mean, like, they dismissed Ballybrown day 2, they, I think, pulled well clear of Ahan. They're obviously 12-point winners the other day, and they pulled well clear as well in round 4 of Kilmallock. So that Ahan game is the only game that they've really been pushed. I think it's fair to say. The Doon game is the only game they were pushed. The Ahan game, they were pushed for periods. They were 9 or 10 up at halftime, got reeled back in, but put the foot in the gas again. They have now a few weeks to play with. If they can get themselves ready for a semi-final against Kilmallock or Monaleen, so they will absolutely fancy their chances that they're going to be in another final. And after that, then it's 60 minutes to get that Daily Cup back into their hands.
Yeah, it's just even picking the team now for Shane O'Neill and the management team, because we've seen Jerome Boylan come back into it. He's had injury trouble, and Emmett McAvoy and Vince Harrington are really 2 players that are stepping up, and you have Tommy Grimes there and Mike Casey as well. And that's only defensively wise. And we see Dylan Lynch, who was on the bench earlier on in the few games, and since he's started the last few games, he's been really impressive in attacking. Peter Casey's going to come back into it. Will Hens being on the bench, and that's even before you mentioned Dahi Dempsey and Kevin Downs, who've been 2 real standout performers for Pierce. So it will be interesting, and who's going to partner William O'Donoghue too in the middle of the field. We've seen James Finn there, we've seen Wayne Kearns there, as I mentioned, throughout the championship. So
JJ Carey's always in around. Heath Dempsey is an option there too. We're after naming 20-something players there. Like, I don't think we probably wouldn't do that for any other club. They actually roll off the tongue as well. Like, like I know you said Dahi Dempsey there, but like, I've been very impressed by Keith Dempsey as well overall for Na Piarsaigh. And he's the younger of the 3 Dempseys that we'd have seen down the years for Na Piarsaigh. Yeah, you'd have to probably make them favourites at this juncture. I know I was still leaning for Doon overall, but I don't think Doon have shown maybe they're true, their top form. No, look, that's it. They're knockout hurling. They're the same as the Piarsaigh. They're 2 wins away from that Daily Cup being back in their hands.
The only thing I would say there is Na Piarsaigh got to the semi-final last year and just got over Kilmallock by a point in that semi-final. So there is quite. I know every team wants to get to the semi-final, but there still is a danger of going straight to semi-final, because you're not out this weekend. It's quite a long break to the semi-final, and I think it's probably not mentioned enough, but it is hard for these top clubs to get high quality of challenge matches, because nearly every club is involved every week now throughout the championship. One
week or other, yeah. I think even the year before, Na Piarsaigh needed penalties against Doon, having won the group as well. So I think their card will be marked that it's, no matter who they're playing, it's not going to be a walk in the park. I mentioned Doon there. We've hardly mentioned Ahan. I mean, if you're from Ahan this week, if you have any hair left, you'll be continuing to pull it out, because they're with a puck up a ball from breaking the glass ceiling, I think, of the last few years for them in terms of getting through this group into the knockout stages. Was it 2019? The last got into a quarterfinal. That was from the Group 2 route. Look, far from us to be criticising Tom Morrissey. He scored a penalty earlier in the piece. This one was not his best strike. I think he'd admit that himself. And serious pressure on any player the last puck of the game with your club season on your shoulders. He got 112 or 113, was it?
I think,
yeah. beaten by 2 points, and you just feel for a hand. It's been a tough few weeks at the hands of Doon. Obviously beaten in this one and beaten in the minor final in the same venue. What was it, 8 days or 6 days earlier or whatever it was. I don't know. I'm not from a hand. I don't know that many people from a hand, but my God, do I have an awful lot of sympathy from this week. It's very fine margins, and they'll be gutted long into the winter about this one.
Yeah, even last Saturday we were both in Newcastle West, and it was sort of funny to see the reaction, because Kilmallock thought they were going out of the championship when Tom Marcy was probably stepping up. But I don't actually know that they know, but I'm sure they had someone.
There was someone watching it on their phone there, but I did see that. Yeah. One of the subs or one of the backroom team or someone had it. Yeah.
But I was just devastated for a hand, because I interviewed Tom Marty early on in the year, and he talked about how they've missed out on qualification in the last 5 years, and how they were so keen this year to push on and finally make a quarterfinal. And then for Tom Marcy, who's, for me, has been one of the best performers in the Limerick Senior Hurling Championship across all the teams in the Senior Hurling Championship. Like, he has carried the fight for a hand. And I remember the day against Napirshy and Clahan, it was really going against him, but he still just kept chipping away, and he did it every day. And he scores the first penalty, and then unfortunately he just misses the second penalty. And as you mentioned, everything that happened in the minor final too, and you have Jack Cosgrove, John O'Connor and Conor Ryan involved in that, and they're involved in this one again at the weekend. Your heart really won't go out to hand, because they were so close to just sealing that spot, and against Doon, the county champions as well. Yeah. And like, even with the team doing it out, there was one or two on the bench, like Pat Ryan and one or two of those players, but it's still a very strong Doon team. Richie English injured, of course, but make no bones about it, Doon wanted to win that game and have real momentum going into the semi-finals this year of the championship. But sometimes sport can just be so cruel, and it was just cruel to hand at the weekend. Yeah,
it is. No, and I feel so sorry for Tom, because it's not just this year. I think, as you were kind of touching on there, it's every year he's the main scorer. He's nailed in the freeze. He's literally under 90% of the puck outs, and yet he still comes up with answers for them. And obviously they got that devastating defeat to Ballybrone the first round, bounced back, probably should have beaten Kilmallock. That's the one that maybe might even stick more in the craw, you know. Probably let that 2 points go there, and that would have transformed their chances in the group. And then got the win over Patrickswell, but look, I think they'll be optimistic going into next year. The younger players will have this 5-game run at senior level. That experience, they'll probably, some of those younger lads are going to play 20s as well in the winter, sharpen them up again. Some of them might be involved with the Limerick 20s as well, and just add to what is an improving panel the whole time. And you never know who from that minor team will put a hand up next year. You know, maybe that they're that bit older in terms of playing with the senior team. So a lot to be optimistic about for a hand. But yeah, you mentioned the permutations. Obviously, we were in Newcastle West covering one game, and suddenly I decided we needed to watch the tail end of the other one. By God, did Kilmallock sail close to the wind here, because even with a hand draw at one point, they were going out and scoring difference. Obviously, if Morrissey nails that penalty, it's the last puck of the game. They are gone. They did not play well against Ballybrone. They relied on a favour elsewhere, if I can put it that way. And ultimately, they're in the knockouts, but only just. And you'd have to be worried about their farm line, given the two recent performances against the Piercy and Ballybrone, beaten by 10 here, and game really over 2 minutes into the second half when Ballybrone got their third goal.
Yeah, and I think Ballybrone probably could have got one or two more goals with the way they were carving open through that Kilmallock defence. But I definitely think I agree with you there. It is concerning for Kilmallock, particularly in the last two games against Napirshy and Ballybrone. And it's a sort of funny one, because they were so impressive against Doon in that game, played a knock long where they drew with them. And I was beginning to think there's something really different about Kilmallock this year. And I think for a lot of people, probably after that game, they had them as contenders. But it's very hard to know how you can turn around a performance in the space of 8 days for Kilmallock this weekend. And now, in fairness, the one thing I would say is injuries probably haven't helped them this year.
Yeah, they're a bit like Patrickswell, the injuries and their injuries to key players. Graham Mulcahy was a bit like ourselves. He was only able to watch on. Who else did you? Phelan O'Reilly was out with a hand injury.
General and Kieran O'Connor as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Grow being a teenager, and Kieran had, I suppose, been a mainstay or a potential mainstay in their half-back line, but just hasn't worked out for him, and that's disrupted their team. They're probably then kind of relying on the likes of some of the older players as well then to go to the well that bit longer. And it is as we said already, it is a very challenging group. Like, it's a very vibrant Ballybrown team they're coming up against. For example, it was the Piershick were the week before, so they were really tested and they didn't have any answers. I just going to again show one of the clips from StreamSport.ie's coverage of the game. Just have a look at one of the Ballybrown goals here.
Yeah, back ever so slightly.
Yeah, again, look, it's kind of a false stat in one way, because the frees are being won by the forwards, but they still only have 6 frees scored for Shannon. Brian?
Oh, Ballybrown coming through. Aidan O'Connor scoops it out to Mikey Kiley. Will he bat it from here? Brilliant finish from Kiley.
Now, there was some great goals in this game. I actually enjoyed this one probably more than a lot. I think Shane O'Brien's goal for Kilmallock was a close second. That was a tremendous goal from O'Brien, but lovely improvisation from Aidan O'Connor. Lost the ball and decided, you know what, I'm better off moving this on to the next man. Scooped it up lovely. And Mikey Kiley, I'd say if Mikey Kiley was an 18-year-old, he probably would have tried to catch that, but Mikey's a little bit more than 18 now, a little bit wiser than an 18-year-old, and decided first time finish was on, and there was little that Conor Hanley-Clark could do in the goal. Ballybrown, goal hungry. I think you had it in your piece with the leader today. Is it 13 goals in the campaign so far? They've got a goal in every game. That's I think that's something that is that's going to augur well for them as they head into the knockout stages.
Yeah, I don't know. You're going to try and play it down now, Tom, obviously with your allegiances there, but Ballybrown have been one of the most impressive teams throughout the championship. It's their running, and it's the way they went after goals. Even from the first day against the Han, that's what stood out to me straight away, because I wouldn't have seen Ballybrown that much last year. I think it was only the Kildimo game I seen them last year, but this year I've seen a lot of them with them being in Group 1 of the championship, and it's the way they're just carving open teams and the running power from all angles. Like Ross Kenny has been unbelievable in that half forward line. Aidan O'Connor has been sensational, and then Brian Griffin, Mikey Kiley, Barry Adams, all these players in attack.
Barry Adams is the only player in the grade, as far as I can see anyway, with 4 goals. He's got 4 goals and 2 points. He doesn't get that much ball in hand, but like when he does, he is devastating. It's very hard to stop. Like, and we saw it again. He got the 4th goal the other day. Just get the ball into his hand close to goal, and he'll make hay. I think he got 5 or 6 goals 2 years ago. Didn't have his best season last year in front of goal, but my God, is he devastating in front there? And I think that was the problem against the Piershick. No one else stood up for them. It was Aidan that was leading the charge, but every other game, someone else has come up with goods. Ross Kenny has got a goal in each of the last 2 games. Brian Griffin, as you say, he got 3 points the other day, goal the previous day. The only thing I will say is they're still at the exact same stage as they were 12 months ago, and they're at the exact same stage as they were the year before. The trick now is to win a first knockout game since 2016. So, that's the mental block that's on the thing. And they're now favourites coming into a game. It was probably a bit easier to approach Kilmallock last year when they were clear underdogs, but now there's an expectation from you and I and everyone else around the county that Ballybrown are probably too good for it there, but that doesn't always weigh well on players' shoulders, as we see in any competition. Favoritism is not something that everyone can deal with that easily.
Yeah, my only thing would be too with Ballybrown, did they put a lot into getting that result against Kilmallock? What kind of energy was put into that game? Because they obviously targeted, and even from
very heavy pitch as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and even from talking to Kevin Lally after the game, he said they treated it as a preliminary quarter-final. They wanted to get their own business done and get into a county quarter-final. So the turnaround is challenging. It's 7 or 8 days playing against Kilmallock, and now they go and play there. And as you mentioned there, the quarter-final record, that's something they'll obviously want to put to bed. No quarter-final win since 2016, so it's obviously something they'll want to try and rectify this weekend. But I've been at hurling games between Galway and Limerick over the last number of weeks, and I haven't seen any player play like Aidan O'Connor has played this year throughout the championship for Ballybrown. I talked about Tom Marcy being one of the best, but Aidan O'Connor's the best hurler I've seen anyways this year live. It's the hurling brain for me. Some players might find it hard to do what he does, but he just seems to be a step ahead every time he gets the ball. Like even that flick for Mikey Kiley to pull that off. And I know even the last day he didn't score what he scored in previous games, but it was central to everything that was good about them. And I just think centre forward is his position because he can just roam around and he does it all. Like, he wins the dirty ball, he sets up scores, and he gets on scores himself. I definitely think maybe the captaincy this year with Ballybrown has sort of drove him on to a new level, but they're going to have to come up with a really impressive coaching plan to try and nullify O'Connor's game the next day, because you're obviously not going to quieten them for the full hour, but you're going to have to try and limit them. And I wouldn't like to be Mark Foley and his management team in that department, because the form O'Connor's in, I don't think there's much stopping them in a club championship game.
Yeah, that's true. I know he's been in very impressive form, top of the scoring charts overall, I think, isn't he? Or maybe Tom Marcy is, but he's top from play anyway, and he's getting those things quite well as well. I think the captaincy is weighing quite lightly on his shoulders. He's embraced it, that's for sure. Kevin Lally, a Galway man like yourself, I think he's enjoying things in Limerick as well, isn't he? He's it is 3 wins from 5. I don't think we should run away from that fact. It hasn't been flawless, but like, they put it up to Doon. They won the games that maybe they were the target a long way out, and as he said, they punched their ticket to the last 6. So I mean, that's objective 1 done. Can they take the next step now?
Yeah, he's done really well so far, and I think it's really only the Piercy game where they haven't delivered probably a full performance throughout the group campaign. Obviously, Piercy had too much for them that day, but as heartbreaking as Doon was, it was obviously a huge confidence for that young group. Like, I know they've won county titles at underage throughout the year, but to go toe-to-toe with the county champions and the county champions to get out of jail really that day, I think it probably gave this young Ballyground group so much confidence then heading into the Kilmallock that they could get a result and look after their own business. But for people from Limerick, they probably mightn't be aware of Kevin Lally, of what he's done, but like, he was a Galway selector with Henry Shefflin with the Galway senior hurling team. He led St. Thomas's to 3 county titles in Galway, which is no easy feat. And he was previously involved with the Galway minor hurlers too. So he has a really impressive track record. And to me, when I seen that appointment, I just thought it was a fantastic appointment straight away. And he comes with a track record of being involved with really impressive teams. And I think even raiding a couple of national pieces this weekend, even people from Ballybrown have really seen his influence, and he's really got things back on the right direction for Ballybrown. And I don't think it's impossible that, like, Ballybrown could easily end up in a county final this year, and maybe you don't want to.
I think that's no. I think it's possible. I wouldn't be so quick though to start thinking like that. It's the old Irish thing, you kind of play down your chances. But no, I think that's highly possible. It's not highly likely, sorry, it's highly possible. And it's, I think Doon will be wary though of if it is Ballybrown that comes through. I will caveat though, Ballybrown and Adair this weekend, just to look to those, Paul. We probably keep the conversation moving here. I know if to look at the other grades as well. Ballybrown lost to Adair last year. They drew with them the year before. Maybe sometimes teams match up well against other teams, and maybe Adair will take some confidence from those couple of results in the last few years against Ballybrown. They'll think, you know what, there's not much to fear here, and they've got their winning feeling back themselves. So this is going to be an interesting one. It's currently penciled in for a Skeeton. I'd say, given the weather, I would not be surprised. This is my own personal view. I wouldn't be surprised if it's moved, because that pitch, could take on a hell of a lot of punishment with the weather in the last few weeks. But anyway, at the moment, it's 2 p.m. Sunday. I think there's a lot to be look forward to there. They're not quite neighbours, Paul, but there's a very close bit of a rat run of a road from Ballybrown to Adair, kind of through a bit of Patrickswell. So they're near enough foes, shall we say? And I think Adair will. I think they'll probably relish being underdogs coming into this one.
Adair absolutely will relish being underdogs coming into this one, and as we talked about, Ballybrown are the strong favourites for this one, and rightly so. 3 wins out of 5 in Group 1 at the Senior Hurling Championship. As you mentioned, maybe with it potentially being moved from Muskegon if the weather does disrupt things this weekend. The only thing I would say, some people might see this as being a one-sided game, but I disagree there, because I think conditions are going to have a huge influence on this. And like, we are into winter hurling now. You could even see it last Saturday in Newcastle West, that conditions are really going to play a factor in these games, and particularly with them being in club grounds with the way it is in Limerick, with the quarterfinals and potentially semi-finals in club grounds. I think that does play a huge influence in things, and this is where free taking becomes so crucial. Goals become so crucial. Like if Ballybrown were to hit 4 goals again, like Adair, I just don't see how Adair win this one. Like we've mentioned about obviously the Adair injuries, but the danger here now is for Ballybrown not to take their eye off the ball and go complacent into this one. But I think there, as you mentioned,
they shouldn't be doing what you're doing, is looking ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
One game at a time has to be done. It has to be, they don't have the experience of winning games. Just literally players in that dressing room who have never won a knockout game at adult level. So I think you have to be wary of that. You can talk about history, but I think you have to be wise to that. I think it's no harm. Both teams have the same time turnaround, basically coming into it a week. Now, Adair were playing on a very dry pitch in McNeville Park, and Ballybrown were playing on what turned out to be a bit of a mudfest in Newcastle West. But if they can recharge themselves, there's no reason probably why they shouldn't have too much for Adair, especially with Adair probably down 2 starters from injury. That's crucial, and getting the bodies fit this time of year, Paul, is vital. So I take it we'll move on to the other game, but I take it you're seeing this as Ballybrown progressing to the last 4.
Yeah, I see this one as Ballybrown just edging out this one. But just on it, for anyone who's heading to this one, I think some of the matchups are going to be really exciting. Potentially maybe Keith Punch going over on Patrick Kearney. If Willie Griffith starts this weekend, maybe Colin Coughlin's a player who could pick him up, and maybe Ronan Connolly could go over on Aidan O'Connor this weekend. So a couple of really exciting matchups there in this one this weekend. But I think Ballybrown will end a bad record in quarterfinals this weekend.
Yeah, one of them has to win a first quarterfinal since a long way. I think Adair's probably they skipped the quarterfinal in 16. I think it's been 10 years since they've won a quarterfinal. Not that they've been in too many. Just final point from my own 2 cents on it. We could have bears in both squares. I think both teams, as we saw last weekend, have that long ball option. So, this time of year, why not let it in around the house and see what happens?
Yeah. So Colin could push back to full back, of course, as well. We've seen him there earlier.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. I would be surprised if we get through 60 minutes of hurling in this weather between these two teams and there's not one green flag. And that's no disrespect to either goalkeeper. I just think we could have a 2 or 3 at least green flags in this one. The other one is Monaleen and Kilmallock. That's set for Bruff Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Both these games, by the way, folks, are being streamed by Limerick J on Limerick J TV. So 2 good offerings, if I do say so. Kilmallock, this is bizarre. Coming into knockout hurling, it doesn't happen in too many competitions where you're coming in on 2 heavy defeats, but they've done enough with the earlier win and 2 draws. So they've lost 2 games, they've drawn 2 games, they've 1 win to date. The win is a long time ago, though, Paul. It's 6 or 7 weeks ago. Monaleen have 4 wins and a draw, and I think actually perfectly for them. They didn't win at the weekend, so there's probably no room for complacency now, lads. We have to get back on the horse properly. We didn't perform to their optimum against Glen Palace Kenry, but they probably had one eye firmly on this fixture from a long way out.
Yeah, like Monlead's target obviously was to get back, well, not get back, but get into Group 1 of the Senior Hurling Championship. For Kilmallock, it's very hard to know. I know we talked earlier on about the injuries, but was James Hickey and his management team sort of keeping an eye on next weekend, and they didn't risk Graham Mulcahy and these players? Maybe they were somewhat fit, but they were obviously keeping an eye on the quarterfinal for the following weekend. It's hard to know, and we won't know because we're not inside the camp, and you can be sure Kilmallock won't be letting that outside the camp. But Monaleen, it'll be really interesting to see have they learned from last year, because there's opportunities in that Patrick Swell game for them to win it last year, and they didn't. It gave Owen Brislan an opportunity last weekend to sort of experiment with his team. He pulled Donegal O'Donnell off early, pulled Larkin Lyons off early. So obviously keeping one eye on this weekend. But I think there's a massive opportunity here for Monaleen to get to the semi-final. And I think this is the next step for Owen Brislan and his management team and this group of players to get to the semi-final. I think if they don't come away Sunday evening with a result, it'll be disappointing, really, because that's 2 quarterfinals 2 years in a row, and they've come up short. So there's a chance here now for Monaleen to push on and get to a semi-final against Nipirshi. And for Kilmallock, there's the challenge for them now is to get back and hit the heights of what they did earlier on in the championship. And that is a challenge in 8 days to suddenly turn on your form. And I don't think you can just automatically flick a switch and start playing well. So I think for Monaleen, there's a chance here, and it's up to them now to go and grab this.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think myself and John in our predictions on this show have tipped Monaleen. Matt has kept his South Limerick bias in favour of Kilmallock. So look, 2 out of 3 wouldn't be bad, I suppose, in terms of that. I think the injury, we didn't even mention Micheál Houlihan went off early last day to pick up a knock within maybe 5 minutes, tried to play on, wasn't happening for him, and off he came. So a lot of walking wounded there for Kilmallock. That's the big ponderable for them is if they can get a lot of those guys back on the pitch this weekend, they have every chance. But I would worry about, those guys are the senior players, as if you like, the likes of Phelan O'Reilly, Micheál and Graham Mackay. There's 3, just to name 3, Kieran O'Connor as well. Those guys know all the combinations. They know how to hurl at this level. Not saying some of the guys that have replaced them don't, but it's just sometimes, you really need that experience, especially when we're coming into these conditions. Yeah, the Monaleen will have learned an awful lot from last year's experience. I know they did play Patrick's well in Bruff as well. They hit a lot of wides, I think maybe 19 or 20 wides. Donald Godalik probably wasn't fit. He was carrying a knock. Maybe they've fleshed out their panel a bit more this year, and maybe they go to the bench that bit earlier. I think they were a bit slow last year to dig into their reserves against Patrick's well. But it's the second year in a row that they're facing the team that came fourth and the team that only accumulated 4 points. So look, they'll see this as an opportunity, and I think they'll quietly fancy their chances without being I suppose overly confident about it. Paul, I see the clock there has clicked to 46 minutes. We could be talking forever about the Senior Hurling Championship, but I suppose just to wrap it up, the County Cup will not be taking place at senior level anyway. I think some of the ones at the lower grades may go ahead, but the one at senior is not, we're told, not taking place in 2025. So that's the year done in the hurling sense for many of those clubs. We're down to 4 playing this weekend, and obviously the Pearshig and Doon waiting in the wings. Paul, if we can switch to the lines of Limerick Premier Intermediate Hurling Championship, Gary Spillane, Effin, Croke, Kilfinney, as far as my maths are concerned, all into the knockout stages. Granabell and Gary with maybe 1 foot there, needing a point to assure us. Blackrock, Bruff, South Liberties, all with the potential to be dragged into a relegation scrap. And Glenroe, who occupy last place with 3 points, need something at the weekend. They probably need a draw at the minimum to get out of trouble. A win would probably save them entirely. A draw would probably force a playoff with a combination of teams. So Gary Spillane, 5 wins and a draw, probably leading off quite well compared to what in line with what they did last year, where they got through the group and ultimately lost the final. But Gary Spillane have certainly been the leading team in this championship.
Yeah, absolutely. And since that defeat to Effin in the group, they've really bounced back, and it's been a difficult few weeks there out in Gary Spillane. But yeah, I think they've been the standout team from the start of this Premier Intermediate Hurling Championship, and they'll really try and push on. But just for the nature of Gary Spillane, they have to play 9 games if they want to go all the way and win this Premier Intermediate Hurling Championship. And then you throw in a few of them playing with Galbally as well. And the football side of things, it's a demanding couple of weeks now out there. But they do look like the form team that could go on and win this championship. The one thing I would say, with Effin, Croke, Kilfinney and Gary Spillane all being already through, the seeding still does matter in this, because you'll obviously have first playing fourth and second playing third. So there still is a lot to play for this weekend. It's not quite a dead rubber, because for all those teams, the team with Gary Spillane, obviously they'll want to finish in first place and they'll want to push on, and Effin and Croke will want to get wins, particularly when it's your last game before you go into the semi-final. As you mentioned, Granabell and Gary 1 foot there, but there comes a pack after them. I think the loser of Liberties and Blackrock, if Glenroe were to get something, then they'll be under pressure, obviously. And yeah, I think the surprise package has really been Bruff in this year's Premier Intermediate Hurling Championship in the semi-final last year.
Yeah, they would have been tipped by a few, I suppose, to go one better, get to a final maybe, or even go all the way. But just hasn't happened for them, has it? 2 wins and 4 defeats. It's stark contrast to what they did last year.
Still hard to believe they're not out of it though, when you consider 4 defeats.
Yeah, it's funny. I think they need a couple of results to go their way. I mean, I'm scratching my head with permutations, but I suppose
finish level with Granada Ballygarry.
Yeah, you see the scenario there is they've lost the head-to-head there, so they'll have to beat Croke Kilfinney, which is no easy feat, and then I think they will need
they need a draw.
They will need they'll need Effin to win, and then they'll need Blackrock to draw. Yeah, so it's like a perfect storm of results, which it's very hard to see happening. I think they'll want to win to get rid of the relegation worries. You know, the funny one for Gary Spillane, like they're not assured a top spot. Yeah, you did mention that there, the combinations, but also the fact they're playing Glenroe, they can actually relegate Glenroe. And I suppose if you look at a map as to where Glenroe is and where Gary Spillane is, like, you know. I don't think the bouncers will ignore that opportunity, and you know, will want to make it 6 wins out of 7 and heading as top seeds as it were, and in theory have the easier, and I'm using my air quotes there for that one, have the easier of the semi-finals. But I think that's motivation enough in trying to relegate your neighbours, you know.
Yeah, and you'd actually feel a degree of sympathy for Glenroe because they performed better in this game than being competitive in a lot of games. Bar that hammering to Blackrock, they've been really...
Yeah, that's the worry, isn't it? It's only a few days ago, like, you know, that's the real concern.
Yeah, and before that, they've been really impressive in every game. Like, they got a draw with Effin early on in the championship, so it just shows how they've progressed and they've been competitive. But unfortunately for Glenroe, they look odds on now to make the drop. It's hard to see them overturn Gary Spillane, and as you mentioned, a heavy defeat like that in the space of a week really for Glenroe to get things right this weekend. They look like the favourites, but look, I don't think they'll lack any motivation coming up against Gary Spillane and try and get one over them and retain their status. But at the same time, if Glenroe could finish level on points with someone, at least they'll be into a relegation playoff then, rather than going straight down to intermediate hurling for next year.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think because they're on 3 and the teams over on 4, they should be looking at, if we win, we're safe, because it's very unlikely that the 3 teams above them will all get to 5 points. So if they get to 5 points, they'll do it. It is possible actually that you could have 4 teams on 5 points. But anyway, we could be all night looking at permutations if this one goes, if there's a scatter of draws. But look, we'll see who can get and secure that 4th spot. As you say, Granada Ballygarry well placed, but very mixed campaign for them, so you wouldn't rule out anything. Paul, we should look down the grades as well. The County Intermediate Championship as we speak. Krugman and Pallasgreen are fighting for their dear lives at this grade. Junior A, Premier Junior A is on the horizon for one of them. 2 of them finished bottom of their groups. It's been a disappointing injury hit season for Pallasgreen, and I know Croom have had a testing, I suppose, a few years at the grade in terms of I don't think they've made the knockouts in a good few years. It's been kind of 5th and 4th place for a number of years. But looking at the other end of it, we have... So I'm losing my train of thought now. We've Cappamore, who lost out to Brewery last week. Brewery gone straight to the semi-final, so Cappamore will face the Piershick, pipping Knockany.
Pallasgreen winning that at the minute anyways. They're 276 points up at half-time. So.
276, is it?
Yeah, 276.
Okay, right. Well, by the time people hear this, they'll know more than us. But interesting to see that they've found something anyway at this moment. And the other quarterfinal, so one quarterfinal is Cappamore versus the Piershick second team, and Hospital Herberstown will face Fiona Castleman. Maru Boher and Brewery, I think 100% record, certainly unbeaten in both cases, straight through to the semi-finals. And I suppose a bit like the senior, they'd want to make sure that they're when the fixture does come around next month, that the teams that have won the group have have their act together really, and are ready to fire again at the grade.
Yeah, I'd say there's a real motivation there for Brewery to get to and win this title after coming up short last year, and particularly. Yeah, and particularly what they've probably seen Croke Kilfinney go on and do at the Premier Intermediate grade, it shows they're probably not that too far away from competing at that grade. So they'll be really looking to push on. But as you mentioned there, with Brewery and Murbo are straight into them semi-finals and the quarterfinals taking place this weekend, they can't afford now to take their eye off the ball, because any of these teams coming through from the quarterfinal will have momentum on the back of a victory coming into the last 4 of this one. But for all these teams in intermediate, they just want to get up and compete at Premier Intermediate, because even with these teams at the Intermediate Hurling Championship, once the intermediate final happens, that's their season done, and not on to provincial level.
Yeah, Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think I was just looking at all of these teams. I think maybe with the exception of Hospital have been Premier Intermediate in, I suppose, the not too distant past. Maybe it could be a decade, maybe since Hospital were there. But these, fairness to these clubs, they've obviously, I suppose, tried to stop the slide when they've been relegated and bounce back. And even the Piercing, you know, had a very tough couple of years at Premier Intermediate. But I think they'd lost something like 16 or 17 games in a row. Fairness to them, they've reset. It is a second team, which is even more challenging, but they're in the business end of the grade. I think they'll be happy with that one. Just scanning down the grades, Paul, and the junior championship or Premier Junior Championship. There's John Cole. Quickly correct me. Premier Junior, Knockaderry and Monaleen are in one quarter final with Crocora, Manister and Caherline. I think obviously the names jump out there. I think for Knockaderry, you're looking at the famous hand, sorry to remind Galway fans, but Tom Condon, Knockaderry. Monaleen, just a word on Monaleen, Paul, as well. Junior B winners 2023, Junior A winners 2024, and in the business end of another championship. That's pretty impressive for any team, especially a second team.
Yeah, and I even think we've seen this year with the Monaleen squad and Umbers Land in an interview with
63 at training one day.
So obviously a lot of those players in the 63 players that were training are obviously playing with the senior squad during training and everything, and they can obviously afford to do A versus B games and everything. So that's probably just showing the value of all these players that are being exposed to that level of training, and it's no surprise then that they're going on and pushing on in a Premier Junior, but particularly after they only just about got over Rathkeale last year in the Junior A county final. So they've obviously went and they've pushed on at this level, and they'll be looking to make a big push too, because we've even seen with Napier having a second team at that level, how it's reaped rewards for them and players that have come through from that second team onto the senior team, and no doubt Monaleen want to do the same.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, Knockaderry in their way in the quarterfinal this weekend. Crocora Manister will face Caherline in the other one. Obviously, Colin O'Neill, I suppose the big standout for neutrals in that one. But Caherline, having I think been at intermediate a couple of years ago, looking to get back there. And talking about second teams, Doon topped their group, so they're in one semi-final. Skeeton, Ballysteen, Kilcornan, led by Talisman Oisin O'Farrell. He's kind of operated centre forward from what I gather. They're in the other semi-final. Probably a bit of a surprise packet, but I tell you, Paul, I know you're probably still trying to familiarise yourself with the geography of a lot of these clubs, but the West teams in the lower grades in the last few years, and the Skeeton, Ballysteen, Kilcornan are obviously one of those now. The West teams are starting to, I suppose, they're starting to make inroads and make their name at the lower grades, and they mightn't have the numbers maybe that some of the city clubs have, but it's great to see those teams come into the business end of championships as well. Yeah,
I actually remember seeing the Skeeton, Ballysteen, Kilcornan last year in a under 20 final against Croom, Grand Ballygarry. It was December 21st now, right before Christmas, and the weather wasn't hectic around them, but it's great to see Skeeton, Ballysteen, Kilcornan really building on that success from that under 20s, because Oisin O'Farrell was obviously on that team, but there was a lot of other decent players around them, and they're obviously making the breakthrough on, but they're building from that underage success, and they'll probably look to make a real tilt at this junior hurling championship this year.
Yeah. Just to mention then, though, that two teams from the West can contest on the relegation final. That's from Bradford and Monaghan. So we've no love lost between those two, I'd say, at the weekend. But one of them, unfortunately, will be heading for the Junior A. And speaking of the Junior A, my notes have evaded me. Yeah, Claughaun and Castletown Ballygran were winners of their group. Claughaun, I suppose, obviously going back, it's 30, 40 years now, so senior champions, and we're, really top of the roll of honour in both codes, slid down the ranks, but trying to make their steps back. They'll be in a semi-final where they'll face, I believe, the winner of Old Christians and Gary Spillane, the second team here, including a friend of the show, James Jim Bob Ryan, I think it's centre back, and friend of the show, John Keogh, is involved in the backroom team for Old Christians. So Old Christians, Paul, a city club, and some of the city clubs have so much resources, but Old Christians probably they go against that narrative. They're probably struggling to field teams. They merge at underage with some teams. So to see a bit of adult success and a bit of progression into knockout hurling, I think that augurs well for a club like that, who've I suppose been rowing against the tide many years at different grades. But in fairness to them, they're battling on hard and looking to put a bit of silverware on the sideboard.
Yeah, it would be great to see one of those city clubs go on and push on, because there's a huge amount of work going in, even at underage level, and in those clubs, as you've mentioned, Clahan and Old Christians, and even if you consider St. Pat's, still obviously be disappointed.
They're all in a kind of one little kind of side of the city as well, and they pool resources sometimes at underage. But to see them standing on their own at adult level it's good to see.
Yeah, and even I was just going to mention with Pats, they were so close last year in that Premier Junior final last year against Fina Kilmeedy, and just came up short, and it was right in injury time that they just lost that game. So be disappointed that they didn't get out of the group. But even with Clahan and Old Christians, it'd be great to see one of them push on this year in that championship, because there's so much work going on in the city, and they do have a lot of challenges as well with fielding teams and everything. I know people might say there's numbers and everything around those, but when you look at some of
the other sports and everything else that come against them, and demographics sometimes as well. Gary Spillane are in Old Christians' way, and if Old Christians can prevail at the weekend, I think they're meeting Clahan. So that's that would be, there'd be no love lost there. Even though I know they're obviously working together at underage to try and rise some of the teams up. The other quarter final, Temple Glanton and Killeedy again. Bit of an all West affair as my dog tries to get involved in the show, as always. Temple Glanton and Killeedy in the other one, they came second and third in their groups, and second teams in the relegation. That's Bruff second team against Patrickswell second team. It's been as we know, it's been a tough year for Patrickswell, but their second team potentially on the brink, or are on the brink of relegation down the grade. Paul, that is probably it for the hurling. We'll come to football now, because we have one matter from last night, Wednesday evening's football. The Premier Minor Football Championship. The last county final that I played in was at minor level, so championship anyway. So a long time ago. Bringing back nightmares, I should say. But Mungret St. Paul's prevailing was at 110 to 1-8 over Ula. They were a bit slow to the boil in this one, but a couple of frees before halftime got them back in touch. Got a goal early in the second half, and couldn't let Ula back into it. Really, they were 5 up going into stoppage time. Ula got a goal. And eventually, after a couple of close scares, was an effort for a 2-pointer even as well. Ula fell short. Mungret get the crown. I think it's only their third Premier Minor football crown. So, a club that seems to be picking up a county title here and there every year in either court. So their winning one is continuing into 2025.
Yeah, they're really just continuing on everything they've done over the last few years. Last year, they won the under 20 Premier title, and just about got over the line against Ula at the weekend, 110 to 1-8. Conor O'Longy, the captain there, he actually played senior for them early on in the year, came on against Kildimo Pallaskinnery and was key in setting up one of the goals, and I seen him that night, and he might be small in stature, but I can tell you he's an excellent footballer, really composed on the ball. And Killian Begley as well, who's with the Limerick Minor Hurlers, scoring 4 points for them. So Mungret will be delighted. They've really established themselves now at senior level and look in pole position to get to the knockout stages for the second year running. They've won a 20s, and as I mentioned, won a minor. So they're really continuing on an upward trajectory there for Ula. They'll obviously just be disappointed to come up short in that one. But I think it was great to see as well, even Josh Ryan, I know he was involved in the backroom team with that Ula minor team. So great to see, in fairness, and fair play to Josh, for getting involved in the club and everything and helping them out at minor level. I think it's always a great thing to see.
Yeah, he could be involved in the 20s. He's been involved in the 20s every year as well, it seems. For a busy man involved with his own playing, and I know his work and professional life as well. He gives some service back, to be fair to him. Just to mention as well, Mungret bounce back ability at the level they lost last year by a couple of points, or a point even, to Father Casey's. But back on that horse, it was I suppose the only thing I'd be concerned about with the minor Premier grade is there was only 4 teams in it. The group phase, they played each other home and away, which is maybe unprecedented, and then came back then in a semi and a final. Probably not the way I'd like to see the grade being run. You want to see more teams contesting at the grade, but credit to Mungret, they got their business done in the knockout games, and obviously some of them would have used that hurt from last year to fuel the comeback for this year.
Yeah, no doubt they're all delighted, particularly with the players that came up short in last year's final, to go one better this year, particularly at the Premier Minor grade. But I would agree with you there. It's not great to see 4 teams only playing at the Premier level. I think the more teams you can get at this Premier grade, I think it's better for all these clubs involved. Not even for all, if you do have more clubs at that level, they're not obviously all going to win it, but even I think just for some of the clubs to bring through more players onto the senior level and be exposed at that high level of play in Premier, I think it's better. I think if you just have 3 or 4 teams competing every year, I think it will make it harder for the clubs involved to get all those players to step up to senior level. So hopefully now next year we can see more teams involved at this grade.
Yeah, it would be nice to see maybe 2 groups of 4 or something like that. I think Father Casey's and Monleen were the other 2, so surprising not to see some other clubs there, and I wouldn't be having goals to them. I know some clubs can just have a shortage of players at a given year as well, but some of the bigger kind of football clubs, a little bit disappointing not to see those. Paul, I think that's everything for you. I know you're jumping between podcasts this evening, but I think you've covered plenty for me there. Thank you for your time at short notice. I suppose we'll convene at the weekend at the senior games, and folks, don't be afraid to tell us where we're wrong and indeed where we're right about different things as the season goes on. You'll see us at a press box or indeed at a sideline near you soon. But Paul Shaughnessy of the Limerick Leader, thanks very much, Paul, and we'll be chatting to you again soon.
Great stuff, Tom. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, Paul. Yeah, that's Paul there, Shaughnessy from the Limerick Leader. Just to flip to the other codes, looking at Camogie from last weekend, the final round of the Senior Championship and indeed the intermediate grade concluded, and we now have the pairings for the Senior Cup and the Senior Plate, and it's Newcastle West who will face a hand just about snuck through in second place in their group. So Newcastle West winning their group, and they will face a hand in the repeat last year's final in one semi-final. Monleen will face Bruff in the other ones, 2 new faces, so one of those will be in a first final in a long time, and I'm sure someone will correct me and tell me it's the first final ever, maybe for Monleen in particular, but Bruff certainly making inroads since their return to the grade in recent years. What that means then is 3rd and 4th in the groups will play in the Senior Plate, with Adair facing Croke Kilfinney in one and the Piershig facing Killeedy, and the loser of these will go into a relegation playoff to see who will be eliminated from the grade for 2026. So a very important weekend for those 4 sides, perhaps even, these games are being played the following weekend, but probably more important for them even than the Senior Cup, because their status at the grade very much in peril. In Intermediate Cup, Patrick Swell and Galbally will face in one semi-final. Temple Glanton will face Granite Ballingarry, and those 4 sides are in the race to become a senior side for next season. The Intermediate Plate will see Blackrock Effin against Cappamore, and Marupoher will face Cremore. Will face Cracora in the other semi-final. The lower grades, I don't think just started yet, but Matt will be back next week with a preview of all of those. Just to mention, as well as Mungret winning that grade at minor football, I suppose it's remiss of me to omit their big open day at the weekend, where they launched their new facilities, the new pitch, new facilities in their grounds in Mungret, and they're welcoming Jarlath Burns, the president of the GA, to their headquarters, and kindly extended the invite to myself, but unfortunately unavailable for it. But great to see Mungret putting such investment in facilities, growing their club and starting to reap the benefits already on the field of play. So Jarlath Burns, the GA president, will be in Mungret this Saturday afternoon to help them launch their facilities, and I'm sure they'll try and shake them down for a few quid while they're at it. The ladies football, we now head into the last 4 of the grades, and the senior, it is Monaghan versus Old Mill. They're facing off on Sunday in the Bog Garden at 3 p.m. Drumbodford and St. Ailbe's in the other one. So Monaghan looking to get back to the final, and St. Ailbe's looking also to get back to the final, but it's standing in their way are the resurgent upstarts and uprisers that are Old Mill and Drumbodford. So Drumbodford and St. Ailbe's head for Knocklong. Both those games 3:45 p.m. this Sunday afternoon. The Senior B sees Ula and Fiona Castlemahan and Mungret St. Paul's versus Ballylander. 11 a.m. starts for both of those this Sunday. The winners will be in the Senior B final. The losers will head for a relegation playoff between, a bit like in the Camogie. And as Matt pointed out last week on the show, only Mungret St. Paul's have won a game to date. So that will change for someone, at least one other side at the weekend. The intermediate semi-finals, Father Casey's will face Maru Boher. That's at 1 p.m. in the Bog Garden, and Knockganey will face Galtee Gales at 1 p.m. also in Knocklang. So 2 double headers on Sunday, intermediate and senior in both the Bog Garden and indeed in Knocklang, the home of Gary Spillane. Great. And just to mention, the Intermediate P Championship also takes place this weekend, as indeed does the Junior A Round 5, Junior B quarterfinals, and the Novice semi-finals. But unfortunately, the time is coming against me this week. I will keep you abreast of all the results of those next week on Treaty Talk. Do stay in touch. Do say hello if you see us at a game or two. And we'll be back next week with a review of the quarterfinals across the grades and a look at those semi-finals.